Okay, today I'm going to do an OPENTOONZ quick tip that's going to be on the long side, but what I'm going to show you here is very, very important if you, like me, are serious about developing a reliable anime workflow. Here's the bottom line is we got to deal with ink and paint, and there's three ways we can do it. Okay, we can use a Toons vector level, a Toons raster level, or a standard raster level. This is what I've been discovering. First of all, and please don't ask me why I'm not using the latest version of OPENTOONZ. If you recognize there's no little icon here to set create a new level of one of the three types, you can tell that this is not the latest version of OPENTOONZ. Well, it is what it is. So I'm gonna create a new level, Alt N, and sorry about that, and what is going on, Alt N, Toons vector level. Okay, so the problem with the Toons vector levels for inking, if I was doing Family Guy, say okay, Toons vector levels are very nice because you have snapping, and then you can go back in with the tire pump tool and tweak your lines. Now if I was doing Family Guy, I wouldn't be tweaking my lines like this. I'd be saying, hey, this is Control C, Control V, let's fill this, and then just change the color to whatever. Okay, and so for this style of cartoon, where maybe you would have a lot of where you would have a lot of simple geometry, Toons vector levels, which by the way are acting flaky right now. This is kind of another thing I wanted to point out. Toons vector levels can be a good solution. I think what it's doing is a Boolean subtract here. Yeah. Once I drew the second one, it went ahead and was able to render the first one. So anyway, I mean, the long and the short of it is that Toons vector levels are very useful. If I was doing an anime inking process, in all likelihood, I would actually set the size to 1, and accuracy and smoothing kind of both fair to midland, and I'm gonna draw my ink lines like so. Okay, so what's the problem with that? Well, for anime, what I'm finding is that doesn't give me the variety and the delicacy in the lines that I want. Now I can get it by using, again, the tire pump tool to go through and maybe make some modifications to my lines like so. Okay, so we can do that. However, it is kind of cumbersome, in my opinion, what I've seen so far. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that we agree that for an anime aesthetic, Toon vector levels are not the way to go. Let's try Toons raster levels. Now the advantage of Toons raster levels is that they're basically pretty simple. Here I've got the brush size set from 1 to 10 with some smoothing. I'm going to turn the hardness down so it's a little bit of a soft brush. And that's not too bad. That's more what I was looking for. If we turn the smoothing down, we can do more of a sketchy thing like this. Okay, that is more what I was looking for, but right there you see the problem. Toons frequently forgets about pressure, even though pressure is indicated here. Okay, so let me backpedal one step. You could say, well, forget pressure then. Let's just do like we were doing with the Toons vector level and just have simple outlines. And we could do that. The problem with that is that, again, we have the problem that we don't have that delicacy of line that we wanted. And so in order to get the aesthetic we want for an anime, we want to be able to do this. We want to be able to have some delicacy to our lines. My experience so far is that OpenToonz very frequently forgets about my tablet pressure, and so I'm drawing along, and now of course it probably won't do it, but I'm drawing along, and then all of a sudden I'll get one of these really big bold black lines that's wrong, and I'm constantly hitting Control Z. Is there a better way? So again, let's agree that maybe Toons raster levels aren't the right idea. What does that leave us with? It leaves us with a standard raster level. Okay? Which on my installation, actually I'll just hit cancel here, because on my installation, if I just hit the B key and start drawing, that's what I get, is a Toons or a standard raster level. Okay, so just so you know, this is what I found. I found that this brush, which, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm using here. Let me go into my basics and see if, yeah. Okay. I'm going to double click that so it opens up this style editor window. I'm going to go to the mypaint brushes. Okay, in the mypaint brushes, I went down to this one right here. It's kind of towards the bottom, but it's called delayed. All right, I didn't change any settings. This is the default quality of this particular brush. With this brush, I found that I'm getting the effect I was after. Okay, so I'm going to set this to 0 so you can see it's got a nice feeling to it. Okay, now I'm going to go back here to, actually let's go to palette so I can just drag this down here. Okay, so that gives me a good, it seems to do a pretty good job of doing, giving me the kind of line that I was looking for. Now I'm going to change my size on it to -1. That seems to be where I'm landing for inking anime. And so then what I wind up with is something like this. Okay, so let's go out to regular size, and we'll see that we can have a really fine, delicate line, or we can get a fatter line. Okay, so now again, let's agree that we're going to ink with raster levels. Okay, I'm going to delete this level. So what that introduces in terms of problems is you cannot do fills in a raster level. You have to convert it to a Toons raster level. But if you're creating an anime, you're going to want to have lines for shadows, things like this. You're going to want to have, you've seen this before, you've seen anime art where, let's see here, I'm going to go back to here and double click this just because that's kind of more what I'm used to. I did not mean to do that. Okay, and then drag this here, and let's say that's going to be a highlight line. Okay, so now the problem with this, and let me just look here at my notes. The problem with this, let's give this a crack. If we want to use this type of technique for our inking, then we want to go to cleanup, and let's see if this works. So we've got all of our colors, and I actually have a color palette already indicated here. The problem that I had, so you would think theoretically what's going to happen is it's going to detect black, red, and blue when I do a cleanup process. Now if you don't know what this is, or this isn't familiar to you, let me show you. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to delete that. When you go into the cleanup room, this is your default settings. Okay? Your default settings are grayscale. If I go ahead and select this raster level and select cleanup, it is going to convert it to black and white. Okay? Now, okay, so you can see this, and that's not undoable. One thing about the cleanup process is you can't hit Control Z and just undo it. So you better know what you're doing when you do your cleanup, because you can't go back to your original raster art once you've converted it. Now you could go on your hard drive and you could browse around and find the files and all the rest, but okay, you really don't want to have to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that level, and let's kind of start from scratch, and I'm going to show you the correct way to create ink lines with a regular raster level, and then do a proper cleanup so that anime style you can have blue lines for shadows, red lines for highlights, etc. It's not a simple process, but once you learn it, it's actually not too slow. Here's what you do. First of all, let's create our raster level. I'm going to go back to my basics here so I can grab my brush, and let's say we have an outline. So I'm just going to say, let's draw a character, and I'm not going to draw their hair. I'm just going to draw this so I've got a closed shape for, say, this would be maybe somebody's face. Alright, and just for simplicity, we'll give it little cartoon eyes. Okay. So let's say we've done our ink, and we like the fact that we have this nice variety of our lines. Well, what you want to do is go to a separate level. Grab your same brush and put your highlights and put your shadows on a separate level. Okay. Like so. Okay, so now if I erase that, you can see what happens. Alright. Step 2. And I'm looking over here at my notes, because once I figured this out, I'm like, I don't ever want to forget this. Go to the cleanup room. Okay? Now, in your cleanup settings, you need to change it to color, and you need to add 2 colors, red and blue. Okay? Now, you want to select both levels. If you don't select the levels, the cleanup well, I'll show you. If I hit cleanup right now and hit it, nothing happens. Well, the reason is OpenToonz will do nothing unless there are levels selected for cleanup. So excuse me. Pardon me. Now that I hit cleanup, there it is, and because both levels are selected, now I've seen it happen that OpenToonz has glitched and done a grayscale cleanup at this step. We'll see if it works this time. It seems to be working most of the time. So I'm going to hit cleanup all, and as you can see, it still looks like it's in color. So now what we have is exactly what we wanted. We have 2 Toons raster levels that look exactly like our raster level drawings, but now if we go back to, let's go back to basics here. If we select this level, let's just see what we have here. If we go to this level and hit the K key, you see if I click anywhere, it selects the nothing color, and if I select black, it doesn't seem to be doing anything. Okay, now this is kind of interesting, but as you can see, that first color is in fact the black. Okay, so now let's select this level, click here, we get nothing, click here. Okay, right now what you can see is the problem with doing it all on a single level. I'm trying to find the red here. Is what I found was that I could click till the cows came home, and you can see it's not switching to blue here even though I'm clicking on the blue. I literally couldn't find my colors. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? It doesn't matter. The key to this process is what OpenToonz calls match lines. Alright? So now that we have done our cleanup, Don't worry about your palette yet. Okay? Just select your 2 levels. And one thing I want you to notice, this is really important to, don't worry about this. You're going to see your match lines are on top. And you don't want them on top, you want them on the bottom. But that's okay. Don't rearrange your levels, leave them on top. Okay? Just go to your xsheet, and you want to apply match lines. Don't worry about, if you want to plumb all the depths of the settings, go ahead. But what I found was, doing it the way I'm doing it, the default settings worked fine. So I clicked apply. Okay? Now, if I hide this level, you can see that the match lines were put to the bottom for me. So now the colors from this level, I could delete this level. Okay, the colors from this level were now added to this level. What's interesting about that is that if we go to the palette window, just to make things a little simpler here, I think, we notice that we have 2 palettes. We have 2 palettes on this one level. This is why it works. This is why it's kind of cool. You got your regular palette that really only has the black lines in it, and then you got this other palette called match lines. So for me, I go to the palette room and I click each of these, and then you want to go over here in the style editor, in your settings, click the settings tab and click auto paint for lines. Okay, you're basically ready to go now. Now, if I go back to the palette for my main colors and I select the flesh tone and hit the fill tool, you can see that it does exactly what I wanted it to do. And of course, obviously, you can tweak the colors to taste. Now, generally, you might then go in here and delete the match lines, but because you already did the paint and you set it to auto paint for lines, you don't need to delete the match lines. There may be a scenario where you would not use auto paint for lines, and then you would just do your painting and then delete the match lines. But for me, it doesn't really make sense to do it that way. Let's see what would happen if we did. If I can undo this, and then I go in here and I turn off auto paint for lines, let's just see what happens. Okay, so now I can color this, color this, color this, and it doesn't, oops, it doesn't, you know, because auto paint for lines is not turned on, it doesn't delete those colors. Now I can go in and I can delete the match lines. The problem is you get a lot of artifacting. Okay, so what I find is the only way around that would be to, in your fill settings, you're filling lines and areas, and you'd have to actually fill in these lines like that, which is obnoxious. It's way easier to just use auto paint for lines. Okay, so this is this procedure. Do your ink with a raster level. Do your red and your blue on a separate raster level. Step 3 is to do a cleanup, but first change your cleanup settings to color and add a red and a blue color. Once again, that's here. If you didn't know it, you wouldn't know it. I found this really frustrating for a long time because I couldn't get it to recognize the colors. And the reason is you got to tell OPENTOONZ what colors you want it to find. Okay? Step 4. After doing the cleanup, go ahead and apply the match lines. Take the 2 levels, even though your red and your blue are over top of your outlines, apply match lines using the default settings, and it will move the red and blue to underneath. Step 5. Notice that you have 2 palettes now. One for the paint, one for the match lines. Set your match lines color to auto paint for lines, and then go and start painting. Now that does seem like a lot of steps, but come on, if you've got you know 1,000 frames that you've inked to go through these steps one time just so that you can now, you know, go to town on your paint. It's really not that much. So for 20 minutes, this is a pretty long, quick tip, but it is a quick tip, and following this procedure, I think, is going to prove to be a very nice workflow for, you know, for anime coloring and painting and inking. I don't mind doing the cleanup step if I can get the quality of lines that I want when I do my inking. And for me, although I definitely see uses for vectors, I definitely see uses for Toons raster levels, just doing inking natively there. For the most part, I'm getting the results I like by using a raster level with this particular mypaint brush that I showed you. So to me, it's worth it to do that cleanup step. And with that, this OpenToonz Quick Tip is over.